from?
Today is May 17th?
18th.
Thank you. May 18th, and we're talking to...
Roy Swantner.
Thank you. And Roy, do you mind telling us your birthday?
April 18th, 1945.
That's interesting. My daughter was born April 18th.
Really?
It's her birthday. 1945. And where were you born?
Enid, Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
My father was in the Army Air Force, and it was World War II was still on.
Okay. And how long did you live in Oklahoma?
Not very long, because my father was, whatever they call it when you're released from the service. Discharged, thank you, Joe. He was discharged a little later in 1945 over at Scott Field. So we moved, my father had a brother that lived in Wentzville, and we moved there for, I guess, about 2 years. And then we moved to St. Charles, and then in 1953 we moved to Bridgeton.
And where in Bridgeton did you live?
The exact address was 12,105 St. Charles Rock Road, and it's the land that the former Honda dealer is located on.
Okay, can you place that a few more landmarks for us? Just in case some of these places are not there in the future, what else is by there?
Right behind it is the enclave of Nottingham, which is then the next housing is DePaul Hills.
Okay.
And next to it is a oil change place, and then Henry Plumbing, and I'm trying to think. It's actually neater. There's like a 1 block piece of Nietering House Lane there yet. We were on the west side of Nietering House Lane.
When you moved there, was the house already there? Did your folks buy a house that was already there?
In fact, the reason we lived in St. Charles was because my dad had his business here in Bridgeton since like '46, but there was no housing over here. Very seldom did anything come up for sale, because there just wasn't many houses.
Well, what kind of business was he in?
Auto repair.
Oh, okay.
And he did towing.
Oh, okay. All right, so he moved his family over to Bridgeton to be closer to his business.
Correct.
Were there any brothers or sisters?
Of me?
Yes.
I have an older brother who's, he was born in '43, and I have a younger sister that was born in '50.
Okay.
And the place, my dad had found a place over here. It was also on St. Charles Rock Road. It would have been, at that time they just used rural addresses, but it was basically, right now it would be underneath the southbound lanes of 270. And it was a building that, there used to be a small airfield in the bottoms. And
Kratz Field, right?
Kratz Field. Colonel Kratz ran it. Mm-hmm. And Colonel Kratz had the airplane repair was done up here, rather than down at the field. And actually, the blacksmith that was up here, Pete Minks, owned several of the buildings along there. We rented from Pete Minks.
Well, Pete Minks, where was his blacksmith shop?
His blacksmith shop, understand that the road changed drastically in that area because of 270 coming through, but Natural Bridge used to intersect the Rock Road another 400 or 500 feet west of where it does now.
Oh, okay.
And there's a historical marker at about, I think it's still called Marshall Lane, that's right by the Highway Department, in front of the what is the name of this little steakhouse?
Ponderosa.
Thank you. Right in front of the Ponderosa Steakhouse, there's a historical marker. Pete's blacksmith shop was about maybe 100 foot west of that historical marker.
So when you came to Bridgeton, this blacksmith shop was still running?
Oh, the blacksmith shop ran until 1960 when the highway took it out. I mean, this man was an excellent blacksmith, and he still did the points on plowshares and just all the regular blacksmith stuff everybody ever did. He didn't do horseshoeing, was like a different trade entirely.
Oh, I see.
But he did blacksmith work, forming metal and.
I guess I was brought up to always think of the word a blacksmith as one that deal with horses rather than farm equipment.
Blacksmith is strictly working with metal, predecessor of most mechanic shops, and the person who does horseshoeing is a farrier.
Oh, well, thank you. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
And but Pete Minx ran that, and his brother Frank lived a little bit down, a little further west than what that was. And Pete had one employee. Walter was his first name, and his last name would probably come to me later, but Walter lived about where Kirshner Block Plant is now. And Walter would walk back and forth. You set your clock by Walter. He walked back and forth every day. He never drove. He merely walked or caught a bus if he went someplace further.
Where Kirshner was located, it's still in the same place, right? But was that the main road at that point?
Okay, I need to clarify that. Kirshner, where they are now, okay, they are located right on St. Charles Rock Road. Kirshner located there in about early to mid 70s.
Okay.
Previous to that, Kirshner had been down in the St. Anne's area where he started out like where in an alley basically behind St. Charles Rock Road and Cypress. Yes, and then he moved down further to on St. Charles Rock Road, a little past where it was again in the alley, but it was a little past. I think the name of the streets down there, but it was a little east of where Collier's funeral home was for years. And
I don't remember ever seeing any alleys in St. Louis.
well, they were gravel or dirt road, and the main businesses were Vatterott built a lot of businesses on St. Charles Rock Road. A block off of St. Charles Rock Road was nothingness because they just left it vacant. And Frank Kirshner started when I was a little bitty kid, mind you, because my dad used to take me everywhere. And Frank Kirshner, he came home from the war like a lot of guys, and he was making concrete blocks by hand back in there, and then they improved it, and eventually he moved down, further down in the St. Anne.
Where he was west of 270 current.
Right now.
Okay. But back in the time that you were talking about where
in the early
shop.
50s.
Okay. The St. Charles Rock Road continued straight then?
Yes.
Okay.
That was called St. Charles Rock Road. And the road that looped from the old St. Charles Bridge and came around and intersected where Benker Lane is now was referred to as Old Highway 40.
Right.
And westbound traffic went on St. Charles Rock Road.
Okay.
Eastbound traffic came on old Highway
Okay.
40.
And that's how the Bayou Bell came then?
No. The Bayou Bell came right straight up St. Charles Rock Road,
Uh-huh.
which happened in around, it didn't?
We have a picture of it, that it's right here
Okay.
where the old Kavanaugh Tavern was.
Yeah, I remember Kavanaugh's Tavern. Cause then do you remember the Iron Dog Farm
Yes.
was like next to it? Cause we owned the old Iron Dog away for Mrs. Trump,
Oh, okay.
Who owned the quarry?
who owned the quarry. We moved it to her house, I think it's over on Churchill Lane over in
Creve Coeur
Creve
Ledoux.
Coeur, Chesterfield, somewhere over in that. It was unincorporated St. Louis County at the time.
What was this thing you moved for someone?
An Iron Dog. There was a very large farmhouse or people's estate, whatever you want to call it, and they had 2 big iron dogs.
Sculptures?
Yes, but I believe they were. I'm almost positive they were cast iron, but they were a ferrous metal, and they were there. And Mrs. Trump, Westlake Quarry, purchased all that ground. You might remember in the 80s, they wanted to quarry that ground, and the people in Spanish Village was very upset, but they bought all that ground in the 50s, late 40s and 50s, to quarry there. And, but we did a lot of towing for them for their concrete mixers and stuff, and so she paid my dad to tow or raise up the Iron Dog and take him over to her house, because at that time conventional stuff, no, you couldn't pick them up, they were so heavy.
I see.
No forklifts then.
Nothing very portable.
Well, let's go back a little bit. You came over on this side of the river into Bridgeton. Where did you go to school?
I started school because we were living in St. Charles. I started school at St. Charles Borromeo.
St. Charles what?
Borromeo. Borromeo. It's a church. Do you know where Sacred Heart Academy is in St. Charles?
I'm not second.
It's
Okay.
on our second. St. Charles Borromeo was like at 5th and Decatur, 5th and Lewis. And, I guess
It's
5th,
still-
Lewis and
yeah.
Clark. It was Clark, Lewis, and then Decatur. And that area there was the big old church there is St. Charles Borromeo Catholic Church. It was run by the Jesuits
Oh.
at that time. And I went to 2 years of school there, which half of 1 year we took the county bus to go back and forth. And then in the 53, 54 school year, we went to St. Mary's. St. Mary's had just built a brand new school. And we started school there, and then for high school I went to St. Thomas Aquinas. And
When you went to St. Mary's, was there a separate room teacher for each grade level?
I'll tell you an interesting fact before I tell you the answer to that. My wife, who's a year younger, was the first of the baby boomers. One nun in one room had 98 kids in her first grade class.
98?
98
Oh
kids,
my God.
one nun, one classroom, and that lady had her hands full.
Oh my Lord have
But
mercy.
they split St. Mary's off about 4 or 5 times as the population in the area kept growing. When I started there, the new school was, yes, it was each classroom had its own, in other words, it was a complete, just 3rd grade, just one teacher, just kindergarten, one teacher. The old school and church and rectory were still standing then, and convent. The convent used 2 rooms for school, and they no longer used the old school or the old church by 53. They'd quit using that.
So you went to St. Mary's. Did you go through 8th grade there?
Yes.
And then where did you go for high school?
St. Thomas Aquinas.
Was
in
that-
Flores?
Okay, all right. And you graduated from St. Thomas?
Yes.
All right.
Just barely.
Okay. All right. Well, tell us, what type of activities do you remember doing growing up? Because you said you lived here in Bridgeton on St.
Right.
Charles Rock Road. What kind of activities did you think about? Maybe what it looked like, Bridgeton looked like, and what just type of activities?
Well, and one thing that I always thought was very interesting was the fact that I explained where we lived on St. Charles Rock Road, right near the intersection of McKelvey Road. And if we walked up McKelvey Road and would start hunting, which I mean was an after-school activity for us, we could go to the Missouri River and never see a house. Now we'd walk, because it would be dark when we'd start home, we'd walk back to Rock Road, but there was only like 4 houses on St. Charles Rock Road at that time.
Now you say we, who would you go with?
My brother and a neighbor
Okay.
who was just a little older. The neighbor was Pruitt, which you probably heard many times.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Here.
Uh-huh. So you
So
would,
which Pruitt was that?
Which Pruitt?
Which Pruitt?
Okay, because a lot of them had the same name, so I'll try and explain.
Okay.
This was Jim Pruitt. Jim was born probably in about 39 or 40. His dad was Ed Pruitt, Eldred Pruitt, and he was born like around 1908, somewhere in there. And his dad was the one who had the farm on McKelvey Road. And his, okay, we went Jim, Ed, and then I just knew the older fellow's grandpa. But then his dad lived where Hilltop Nursery was,
Oh, really?
which is like where Lowe's, part of Lowe's store is now.
yeah.
They had the old house and stuff was up there, but that's there was Jim, Ann, and Nancy, and Nancy was my age.
And when you went up McKelvey there, that was just an unpaved road, or?
Oh no, it was paved. It was already, by the time we moved here, St. Charles Rock Road was concrete, and McKelvey was blacktop.
But did it go all the way through to Natural Bridge?
No, it stopped at St. Charles Rock Road. From St. Charles Rock Road to Natural Bridge, that was built in about 1963-64 time period.
But there was a road there to go to the top of the hill?
No,
Not at all? Just a track?
there was nothing. That was a peach orchard,
Okay,
and you could start. Frank Benker owned that.
okay.
I guess Frank was your
My
dad's
grandfather's,
uncle.
yes, dad's uncle.
And, but Frank owned that ground where Target is and everything. That hill sloped all the way down almost to where the bank is. And he had it terraced and had orchard on that ground. Because that's where we used to sleigh ride. That was great sleigh riding because it was
Yeah, real steep.
terraced.
If you wouldn't have gone to St. Mary's, what public school would you have gone to?
Pattonville.
Which was on Fifi?
I don't know which one we would have went to. The only one I was really familiar with was the high school. And at that time it was like where the Learning Center
Yes.
is now.
Yes, okay.
And I mean I had no idea because all of one neighbor had kids that were quite a bit younger. But otherwise everybody in our little neighborhood went to St. Mary's.
Okay,
There was no,
okay.
because you gotta understand, everybody was on 2, 3, 4 acres or more,
I see.
and there wasn't, and what families were there all went to St. Mary's.
I see. So you said your dad did auto repair and
Yes.
towing?
Yes,
Did your mother work?
she did not.
Okay.
She
all
did
right.
not.
All right. Now,
Uh,
when you were in St. Thomas Aquinas, did you have any part-time jobs?
Oh yeah, I started part-time jobs when I was in about 5th grade.
That's kind of young.
Well, it is, and in fact, no earning money, but from the time we were kindergarten age, my dad had us working in the shop, cleaning floors and cleaning parts and answering the phone, things of that nature, so he wouldn't have to run get it.
Speaking of which. Speaking of which.
Shouldn't have these things, should we? The, I'm trying to think where we were. Okay, I was doing that sort of thing. When we were about I was about in 5th grade, where the Amoco station and the AutoZone is now at St. Charles Rock Road and Recovery, where the Red Lobster is.
Yes.
That was a place called M&M Bait House. And Jim Pruitt, the neighbor I was talking about, their house is still standing. It's the one right next to the Honda dealer, where the Honda dealer was. The brick house, it was a law firm or traffic law or something, and now it's gonna be an insurance agent in there. That's where they live. That house was built in the 30s. And
Is that the one with the white frame shingles on it? Or is that a
Brick.
different one?
it's all
just
brick, and the
complete-
lower level is kind of white because that was the basement.
Uh.
At one time, the ground was all up there and was just a drive-in basement. But Jim worked for this bait house all the time, and in the summer he would get us jobs whenever they would get worms, 10, 20, 50,000 at a time.
By
And-
digging him up?
No, they would just, I
Oh, well,
they'd come in like from Tennessee or
Oh, I
just,
didn't understand.
they would come in big buckets, and then we would have to dump those out and count them out into little boxes of 25, 50,
And
and
these
100.
were live worms?
Oh yeah, that they were selling for bait, because so many people were coming out, and they'd fish in the river, and there was several little ponds all around here that people would go and fish in.
And whose place was this?
The fellow who owned his name was, we called him Maxie, but his name was Wilford Maxiner.
Wolford Maxiner?
Yeah, well, I think it was Wilford, W-I-L-F-O-R-D.
Okay.
But we always called him Maxie, that's all I ever knew him by.
And this was by where Red Lobster is in front
Right.
of Target. Okay, just
Mhm.
trying to place it.
Right,
Because I don't recall it. In the years I've been in Bridgeton, I don't
no.
have any recollection of this place.
I've never been in the market for worms.
No.
No. And I mean, it was kind of a disgusting job, but that's what he would, I mean, it was easy, and we were kids, and it was something that,
what was your pay?
Yes, we want to know, how much did you get paid for counting and
we
sorting
were
worms?
paid like, I think we started out like at 25 cents an hour, and he gave us like 50 cents an hour, which was pretty good.
Yes,
In,
yes.
say, 1956,
Oh, yeah.
1957, for kids, we'd maybe work 6 or 8 hours a day, and we could walk home for lunch, and it is. And then as Jim got older, and he would work inside doing sales and things, he hired us to cut the grass and do whatever he wanted done around there. But then by the time I was in 8th grade, I went to work with my dad. I'd get off the school bus every evening, because the school bus, the Benkers, it was the same bus the Benkers would ride, but then it would go east on the Rock Road when it left here, and I'd
Was
get
this
dropped
in
off.
high school?
Grade school.
Oh, we're still in grade school
Like
here.
6th, 7th, and
Oh.
8th grade, I worked there full time in the summers after school.
At this bait house.
No. This is when I was working in the garage. The bait house, that was just summer jobs until I was till I got out of 6th grade. Like, when I started 7th grade, then I was allowed to start working in the garage.
So you worked for Mr. Banker?
No, worked for my dad.
Yes. Oh, okay.
We were 3-4 doors down from Mr. Benker's.
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite following this.
Right.
And where was this located?
The garage?
Yes.
If it would be right underneath the southbound lanes at 270 on the west side of the Rock Road. Our front door looked at the old Westlake Amusement Park.
Did you get to go to Westlake Amusement Park when you were growing up?
No.
No, why not?
Well, I don't know. I could only guess it was probably partially because of money, but we didn't really have a desire to go over there, and you have to realize that by the mid-50s, there wasn't much left over there. I don't suppose, Jenny sitting here, I don't suppose you guys ever went over there.
Because our school picnics
We're in
were at Chino Rocks or Blanchette.
Right.
Well, but I lived in the city and we always came to Westlake.
Did you? But
And my dad,
by the
for our
50s?
school picnic, yeah, I remember in 8th grade, that would have been in
You must
1957.
I said you were the last one there, because about 58 it burned. Because we sat on top of the filling station and watched that tour burn. It was a heck of a fire.
Wow.
It was all wood. It was all dilapidated. They had shut the roller coaster down a year or so earlier.
What year was this?
I think it burned in 58, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
Because it was after they had started building Carrollton. Carrollton started, I think, in 56. You've probably been through that with the records, but I'd have to go back and really look. But I believe it was around 56 that they started. Because when I was in 8th grade, there was kids in my class that lived in Carrollton. And that was, we graduated in 59. And, but going back to like this bait house, it's interesting when you know where places were and what's there now. Now, when they built Red Lobster, I live now at 3740 McKelvey Road, which is right behind AutoZone.
Okay.
And I had known the bait house and stuff was there, and the Amico filling station was there. But we watched, and they were driving piling, because it was very swampy in that area, very wet, and they were driving piling. And I had gone down one day and was talking to the guys and was going to tell them, because Maxie had several wells dug in that area. They didn't want to talk, because at the time I wasn't very old, and in my early 20s. And so I went back home and watched, and they were doing this pile driving, and they hit one of those wells, and they were going boom, 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 and it went down out of sight. And they shut the place down for a week till the engineers could check it out again. But all they did was hit a well.
And if they would have listened to
If
you.
they would have listened, but most places don't want to listen to. I'm sure, again, you heard, you guys here have seen many people come by and they say, oh, don't do that because this will flood, or don't do that because it happens. They don't pay any attention. When we were children, this old Highway 40 where it made a curve, every time it rained hard would flood. It would have several inches of water over at the curve down there. But, I mean, there's interesting things like that you see as they went all along.
Now, when you were in high school, then you worked for your father's garage?
Yeah, that.
And what kind of work did you do for your father?
I did that, but starting as soon as I was 16, I went to work for Grandpa Pigeon.
Really?
Yeah.
On St. Charles Rock Road or there at the Wedge?
I was one of the first ones that started working, we called it the new store, the one that is gonna be a Walmart store in St. Charles Rock Road, 11,900 St. Charles Rock Road. And I knew Grandpa when he was down here.
So there was a man named Grandpa?
Well, his name is Thomas O. Pigeon. But
Grandpa Pigeon.
but his grandkids all call him Grandpa. So he was Grandpa Pigeon. And that's why, and the only reason that store came into existence is he owned a China factory. And he retired, he quit and shut the factory down. Well, most of his family was working for him, and none of them could find jobs.
Where was this China factory?
In Barnhart.
Oh, okay, all right.
And so there was a couple buildings up here that were vacant, and he moved all of his old, the original name was Pigeon China and Supply Company. And he moved all of his old, he made a lot of stoneware for restaurants. And he moved that in there and bought a lot of Army surplus, which was tons of that around. And that's where they started. He would just buy things in bulk and nobody didn't care what it was, and he would sell it.
What did you do at Grandpa Pigeon on St. Charles Rock Road?
I stocked shelves, I was a cashier. Again, whatever they wanted, I did.
And this was when you were in high school?
This was when in high school. Now, my junior and senior years of high school, I worked like 40 hours a week while I was going to school.
My goodness, how could you put in 40 hours a week as well as going to school?
That's what my teachers used to say.
Yeah.
That's why I said I just made it out of high school, but I was one of the few kids in high school that was driving a brand new car.
Oh, what kind of car was it?
I had a 61 Chevrolet Impala.
Did it have the big
Or two.
fins?
No, that was like an in-between fin year. They had big fins a little earlier, and then they went to a squared off back end, and then fins came back
What
again
color
later
was
on.
your car?
It was white with red stripes and red interior.
And it was brand new?
Brand new.
And how did you pay for the car yourself?
With cash.
Well, wow.
That's the only way you could buy anything.
Yeah, I suppose
How much
you're
was
right.
that car?
I suppose you're right.
That car, I think with the tax and everything, I gave my dad like $2,700. I think it in those days it was always a big margin in automobiles, and I think at list price was like $3,300, something like that.
And what year was this, do you think?
1961.
The car was a 61?
Mm-hmm.
How many, just kind of, I'm interested, how many kids or friends or relatives do you think you got in the car at one time?
How many?
Yeah, because I remember
I
you
would-
packing a lot of friends, family.
Well, I never let any more than 6 in there. That was a choice type thing. I mean, we had other cars we roamed around in. I had the advantage of, by the time I was in high school, I was a pretty good mechanic. And I worked on everybody else's car. I could make enough spending money. And when Friday night came, I could go out and I had a new car to drive.
And you only needed one girl, right?
That's right. I didn't have any use for the rest of them.
Yeah.
And we had some older cars where we'd get 8 and 10 people in them.
Because I remember growing up, there were no seatbelt rules, no child safety belts, and so people, as children, you'd sit on someone's lap. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, if you went to the drive-ins
Right.
in the summertime, I mean, it was same price for one or a car load. I mean, they didn't care if you packed them in the trunk.
And where was the drive-in when you were at that
Well,
age?
one of the drive-ins is, the markers are still there, is the old Airway, which is Shop and Save. The 4-screen drive-in was a little further down in St. Anne's, about a half a mile further down. I can't think of the buildings that are there, but it's right about where the city hall is now. That big shopping area there, that was the 4-screen. And they were just everywhere.
Yes.
And there were, we went to the movie show mostly up until I started driving. We went to the show, there was a GEM down, the GEM, which was down in, pardon?
St. John's.
Yeah, St. John's or Overland area, just past Brown Road. But mostly we went to the Strand in St. Charles. Because when we were, I remember when we were like first grade or so, we'd walk there.
To St. Charles?
Well, we lived in St. Charles.
Oh, I see.
But
what
we
you're
lived
saying.
down
Okay.
on North Kings Highway.
Okay.
But it was 10 cents to go to the show. You'd have 15 cents and you could buy, if you stopped at a confectionery, you could buy all the candy you could possibly eat for the nickel, and it cost you a dime to get in. And the shows would last 2, 3, 4 hours, so.
Right.
And
Well, let me ask you, how long did you work at Grandpa Pigeon?
I worked there from around April or May of 61 till the end of May in 63.
Oh, so maybe about 2 years.
Mhm.
Maybe by the time you graduated high school?
Right, in other words, when I got out of high school, I took a trip for about a month and then I came back and went.
You took a trip where?
A friend of mine, Lou Kloss, they ran the Kloss's Market.
Yes.
Okay, Lou and I were in the same class at school. We got out of school and he was going on to college, I was going to work. We had a graduation party down on the Admiral, and the next day we sat there and looked at one another and said, wow.
Road trip.
Road trip. So we loaded up my car, which again, it was only a couple of years old. We went from here, we went through International Falls and up into Canada.
Oh my God.
Then we went across Canada and came
Wow.
down the west coast as far as San Diego.
Oh, wow.
And then we came back up through Yellowstone, and then at 70 it was partially built. Then we came back whether you want to call it Highway 40 or Interstate 70 part of the time.
Two young guys, just graduated from high school. Did you stay at motels or
Some hotels, some tents.
tents?
Yeah, we had a pup tent, little small camping tent, just big enough for 2 guys, and we stayed in a tent, and we stayed in nice hotels. We stayed in up in Banff, Canada. We
Yeah.
stayed in a cabin.
That must have been a wonderful adventure.
Yeah, it really was. We should have recorded that. We actually kept a journal, and then someplace along the line we lost it. I have like 1 or 2 reels of 8mm from that.
Now,
That is quite an experience.
what happened to this friend? What was his name?
Lou Kloss.
And what kind of work or what did he go into when you?
He studied commerce and finance at SLU. Went to, as soon as he got out of SLU, the draft sucked him up. That's what happened.
What was
almost
going
everybody.
on? What conflict?
Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
It was-
Yes.
He graduated in like 67 from SLU. And rather than getting drafted in the Army, he joined the Marines and became a Marine aviator, flew helicopters in Nam. And then came back after the war, worked as a financial person, and then ran what was the family business. He and his brother bought it, and they ran that for many years till the airport took them out.
All right. So after you came back from your glorious adventure, then what did you do?
I worked full time
Where?
at our auto repair business was called Westlake Motor Company, And by that time, because 270 had taken out the building we had been in, we built a garage where the Honda dealer is now, but just a small garage. And I worked there, and I got married in 65. My father passed away in 66, and that's just what I did.
Well, who did you marry now?
Her name was Nancy Kennedy. She lived in Bridgeton Terrace, and her dad worked for McDonnell Douglas. Well, at that time he worked for McDonnell. There was no Douglas involved yet.
And you previously mentioned that she was a year younger than you were?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, she's
Did you go to Aquinas? Is that where you met her?
Well, no, I first met her at St. Mary's Church because we used to go. Her father was an usher at, I don't know, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Some mass, it was the same one we usually went to. But she was at St. Mary. I knew who she was from St. Mary's. And we actually first went out because I wasn't going to go to this dance. And again, several of my friends knew that one of the other guys was going to ask Nancy to go to the dance. But we also knew Nancy's dad, and she wanted to go out with this other guy. We knew that the first guy who called, she either went with him or she didn't get to go. That's what her dad's rules were. So
she had to go with the first guy that asked her, else she wasn't able to go. Okay.
Right.
It wasn't like she could just hold out for the best offer.
No.
Okay, I got the picture.
And so these guys ran me to the local store or payphone and farmed up to 10 cents for me, and I called her and asked her out.
And so she had to go with you.
It was either me or nothing. She wanted to go.
And what was this dance?
It was at St. Mary's. It was a CYC.
Oh, okay, yes.
We had started the CYC there about a year earlier because there wasn't much for teenage people to do out here. Especially if we went to the Catholic schools, we were not in touch with the kids from the public schools at all. So, we met at the CYC and then dated through high school, and
Did she go to St. Thomas then?
she went to St. Thomas Aquinas, and I graduated 63, she graduated 64.
So what did she do after high school?
She worked for about a year for a company called NAFCO, which was the forerunner of what's Mid-Coast Aviation now. Mid-Coast has the ground services. Actually, they had several places. They've gotten bigger, expanded, downsized, got bigger. I mean, they've been all up and down, but she worked for the forerunner of what's Mid-Coast. It was NAFCO. It was run by Remmert Warner. Remmert was the main guy over there.
What kind of work did she do? Was it secretarial?
Yeah, right. They did, at that time, everything was handled, in the parts department, inventory and stuff was all handled, paper and pencil, and they were just starting to get into IBM cards where they did the little punch out holes in them, and that's what they would print all this stuff up by hand, and then they'd run them through these cards, and they had an office full of people just taking care of the parts inventory.
When you worked full-time then, you took over for your father, you said he died. How big was your garage? Would you call it a garage?
Right.
How big would you say was, how many people worked?
Oh, when I first started, it was just he and I.
Uh-huh.
And then he passed away, and I added one guy, and we added a little addition on, and Jenny's uncle, Archie Null, helped us build an addition onto it, and Jenny's cousin Mike worked there for about 2 years.
What was the biggest part of your business?
Up until 1969, the biggest part of my business was the towing.
Really? Towing?
Yeah,
Why was that?
Well, we did a lot of towing for the Missouri Highway Patrol, for the local police department.
Oh,
And we did a lot of commercial towing, like I mentioned, Westlake Quarry and dump trucks and all that sort of thing.
I see.
And, my wife didn't really like me getting up from the Christmas table or Thanksgiving table and leaving, so she said it was time to get rid of the tow trucks. So we,
oh,
in '69, we got rid of the tow trucks, and by '73, I had built a building on McKelvey Road, the one that is right, actually, I said my house is behind AutoZone. There's a garage right behind AutoZone, and I built that and moved in there. And we got up to like 12 employees at one point. And we had that number went up and down because of the economy, but and I still own the building, still live next door.
and so are you retired?
Yes.
You don't have a working garage now?
No, I let somebody else do
Well,
that.
let me ask you, did you have children?
I have 3 daughters. Donna was born in September 29th of '66. Elizabeth was born April 20th of '69. And Susan was born May 9th of '72.
And where did they go to school?
They started at St. Lawrence and Mortar Catholic Church School, and then we were able to go to Sacred Heart School in St. Charles, and they all graduated from Sacred Heart in St. Charles, and then they went to St. Joseph's Academy on North Lindbergh, or South Lindbergh.
That was all girls, or?
That was all girls,
Okay.
yes. And they graduated from there, and then they all went to at least 2, maybe 3 colleges.
Hard to keep up?
No, they were on the phone every day with their mothers. It wasn't too hard to keep track of them, but they went out of town to school, and some stayed in town. And
Now, are they here in St. Louis now?
one is in St. Peter's, one is in Oakland, which is at the edge of Kirkwood, and one is in Omaha.
Okay, all righty. So you get to see them periodically?
Yeah, the one in Omaha we see like 8 or 10 times a year, and the ones here we see weekly or more.
Well,
You must have some grandkids in that, Nick.
7. Well, my oldest, which is interesting, we've got way off of the track chronologically, but when Bridgeton, when we moved here, Bridgeton was 6 square blocks over what is gone now, but it was over on Natural Bridge where Bridgeton Tavern was, and Telsher's Hardware Store, and Henderson's Market, and Post Office. That's all that was Bridgeton. In about '57, Bridgeton annexed like 11 square miles. Weren't very many people here, but that's what took us all in. And my dad got on the council in '58, I believe it was '58, and he was on the city council. At that time, I think it was called the Board of Aldermen, and there was no mayor. The head person was like the chairman of the Board of Aldermen. And so I grew up a lot with the politics of the city. And we mentioned my oldest granddaughter now works in the Public Works Department for the city of Bridgeton.
she does.
Yes,
Oh.
it's kind of interesting.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So as long, we never came to Bridgeton, Bridgeton came to us. And I think, I can't remember the dates, but my dad must have quit the city, having a position there around 65, and I believe Ed Benker took his place on the council at about that time.
What is your father's name?
Henry. Henry L. Swantner,
And what is your full name?
Roy Edward Swantner.
Okay. Now, did you have any positions as, in Bridgeton and alderman or anything?
No, the most that I've done has been volunteer positions on committees or.
Commissions? Have you served on any of the commissions?
Yes, I've been design and review board and been right now I'm on the board. I think it's Board of Adjustment.
What do you, looking back, how would you characterize Bridgeton? You said Bridgeton came to you. What other things can you just, thinking about Bridgeton, what do you recall about it, or
Well,
what strikes
When
you?
when we first moved here, it was all farmland. We used to go hunting like where Carrollton was, and we saw them build 2,000 houses over in Carrollton, and then we saw them take 2,000 houses out of Carrollton. And
But you
I
can't go
see.
hunting anymore.
but you can't go hunting on a runway. They really frown on that.
When you say hunting, what did you use?
We mainly went rabbit hunting and quail hunting in farmers' fields over there.
Did you have shotguns?
Yeah, mainly shotguns. It was the only thing around this area that you really would use a rifle for was if you were in the woods and shooting at squirrels. And that was about it. That would be like a 22 or something. It wouldn't be any kind of a powerful gun. We used to do a lot of dove hunting. When I was, say, 6th grade to out of high school, we could go out our back door and load your gun and start hunting. You know, that was not a big deal.
And then what would you do with these animals or?
If you shot it,
Yeah.
you ate it.
Oh, okay. And your mother was okay with fixing it up,
As
or?
long as we cleaned it.
Okay, because I'm not a hunter, in my family nobody was hunters, so I don't really know that much about it.
Well, and going back to like we were talking 5th and 6th grade and stuff, my brother and I'd set out rabbit traps, and we'd catch rabbits, and I mean it was nothing to catch 5 or 6 rabbits a week, and like my parents would save them up and then maybe have a big party and everybody would have rabbits or squirrel or whatever we had. They'd use that for the meat to do that. But we ate a lot of just regular meals too. But we had a lot of different. We used to do a lot of dove hunting, like where DePaul Hills is, which is a pretty popular sport these days. But it was open enough land that there was nothing close enough that you could shoot that it would hit any individuals or homes or anything.
What, have you taken advantage of the programs at the Bridgeton Community Center over the past several years?
Not really. By the time that was being built, my kids were pretty much doing other stuff. I was always heavily involved in my own business. In the last few years, I've been a member of the Kiwanis Club for many years, and we use that quite often, like for pancake breakfast, or we have meetings there and things of that nature. But we don't do a lot. I've not done a lot as far as the community center is concerned, as far as participating in their programs. It just, I've been retired now about a year and a half, and so I'm just kind of getting into it.
Into the retirement
Yeah.
field?
Yeah.
Do you plan on staying in Bridgeton, or?
Oh
do you-
yeah, yeah. We've had offers at different times to sell our home, but we don't really know where else we'd want to go, and we're comfortable there.
And you're just basically real close to Arlington Methodist Church, is that correct?
Right. If you're on if you're on McKelvey Road, you leave on St. Charles Rock Road, there's 3 residences and then Arlington Methodist Church, and we're in the residence that's closest to St. Charles Rock Road.
There was one house that had a white shingled roof. Do you know who
It
lived
was
there?
a white metal roof. Originally, that was built by a fellow by the name of Elmer Briner. Again, about 57, somewhere right in there. And he did have just a gravel and dirt road going up to his house. That's the house that's in the middle. Then Fred Gherkin and his family built the house that's on the top of the hill. And then, and I forgot what year that was. That was 62, more like about 64, I guess. He built there in about 64. And then I built my house in 65. Yeah, I built my house in 65, which is the bottom one. And now, well, the house you mentioned that Elmer Bringer had, Dr. Gilbertson and his wife lived in there for 20 years or so, I guess at least. And now Joe and Chris Boots live in that house. And the fellow who lives in the house, family that lives in the house that's at the top of the hill is, I don't know the gentleman's name, but they bought it off of Mrs. Gherkin's. They bought it from the original people that built there.
And who did you buy your lot from?
Well, that's a little bit of a leading question because I bought it from my dad. However, a fellow by the name of Armin Eckelmeyer, who lived across from where Grandpa Pigeons was, about where that Phillips 66 station is. Eckelmeyer bought the strip of land, forgot the guy's name, but he bought the strip of land that composed the firehouse, which is now the AutoZone little complex there, and that went all the way up to Arlington Methodist, is up there at the top. And he sold the bottom to the fire department. He sold the next 2 lots to my dad, the next lot to Briner, and the 2 at the top to Gherkin.
Okay.
And he kind of knew, and I guess my dad knew, they bought them before the road went through, but the people in Carrollton, the Fisher and Fritchell, they were already talking about sewer line and running a road from St. Charles Rock Road to the entrance of Carrollton. Because when they built that road, they had to take out the old streetcar line. The streetcar crossed the creek right where McKelvey Road crosses the creek there now. And they had to take out part of the old streetcar line to put the road in.
Did you ever ride the streetcar? I didn't.
No, the one that rode streetcars down in the city.
Yeah.
But this line had been abandoned many years before then. In fact, I think by the time we were growing up, they had quit running the one to Creefcar Lake.
Roy, we really thank you for coming over to the Banker Farm and sharing all your experiences and memories with us. And as I said, today is May 18, 2011, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.